For context, this book refers to any sort of spanking or corporal punishment as beating. Probably the majority of us belong to the category of decent people who were once beaten, since such treatment of children was just a matter of course in past generations. Be that as it may, to some degree we can all be numbered among the survivors of poisonous pedagogy. Yet, it would be just as false to deduce from this fact of survival that our upbringing caused us no harm, as it would be to maintain that a limited nuclear war would be harmless, because a part of humanity would still be alive when it was over. Quite apart from the culpably frivolous attitude towards the victim this view betrays, it also fails to take into account the question of what after effects the survivors of a nuclear conflict would still have to face. The situation is analogous to poisonous pedagogy, for even if we, as survivors of childhood humiliations, we all too readily make light of, don't unalive ourselves or others, are not drug addicts or criminals, and we are fortunate enough to not pass on the absurdities of our own childhood to our children so that they become psychotic, we can still function as dangerous carriers of infections. We can still infect the next generation with a virus of poisonous pedagogy as long as we claim that this kind of upbringing is harmless. It is here that we experience the harmful after effects of our survival, because we can protect ourselves from poison only if it is clearly labeled as such, not if it is mixed, as it were, with ice cream advertised as being for your own good. Our children will find themselves helpless when confronted with such labeling. When children who have been beaten or spanked as children attempt to downplay the consequences by setting themselves up as examples, even claiming that it was good for them, we are inevitably contributing to the continuation of cruelty in the world by refusal to take their childhood tragedies seriously. Taking over this attitude, their children, pupils, and students will in turn beat their own children, citing their parents, teachers, and professors as authorities. Don't the consequences of having been a battered child find the most tragic expression in this type of thinking? Although the general public is beginning to understand that the suffering is transmitted to one's own children in the form of an upbringing supposedly, quote-unquote, for their own good, many people with whom I've spoken in the U.S. still believe that permissive methods of child rearing allow children, quote-unquote, too much freedom, and that it is this permissiveness, not poisonous pedagogy, that is responsible for the marked increase in crime and drug addiction. Even cartoons and jokes make fun of parents who have been tolerant and supportive attitude towards their children, emphasizing the dangers if parents allow themselves to be tyrannized by their children. King Solomon's mistaken belief, which is that if you spare the rod, you will spoil the child, is still accepted today in all seriousness as great wisdom and is still being passed down to the next generation. These attitudes, although they now make a more subtle and less apparent form, are not far removed from these quoted in the following pages to the detrimental effects of child rearing methods. Such views have not been borne out by many years of experience. Theoretically, I can imagine that someday we will regard our children not as creatures to manipulate or to change, but rather as messages from a world we once deeply knew, but which we have long since forgotten, who can reveal to us more about the true secrets of life and also our own lives than our own parents were ever able to. We do not need to be told whether to be strict or permissive with our children. What we do need is to have respect for their needs, their feelings, their individuality, as well as our own.